Hey guys, Drifter here. It is once again time to talk about the boogeyman that is skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM, one of the hottest and most contentious points of discussion not only in the Call of Duty community, but Fortnite, Apex, and honestly just about every game ever nowadays. This time, however, I want to talk about what I hope happens in the future with Black Ops Cold War and how Black Ops Cold War handles its skill-based matchmaking. I think that I'm one of the most qualified people on YouTube, at least, to talk about this, because I'm one of the few that's put in any actual scientific research into the topic, and one of a few that has a background that allows me to sufficiently understand algorithms. Not that I'm an expert in either, not that I'm a programmer, and not that I developed it or any of that kind of nonsense, but rather that I've got a couple of skills and expertises that kind of puts me in a good spot to analyze things. Over the years, I have benefited from and been punished by skill-based matchmaking in various games and in various ways, so I have an experience to offer as well. Let's talk about skill-based matchmaking. It's very real and has been factually proven to be real as much as is possible without seeing the algorithm itself. I have for years, and literally years and hundreds of hours of work, have not been able to prove that skill-based matchmaking exists. I'd had no evidence for it whatsoever, and I've had developers tell me, both in public and private, that it doesn't exist. So with a lack of evidence, and with experts telling me it's not real, I was always of the opinion that skill-based matchmaking is not real, which put me very, very much so at odds with the community, because I refuse to believe in things until they're proven, regardless of how much other people are feeling it, or regardless of how popular it is, or how good it sounds, or any of those kind of things. Unless the facts are there, I'm not going with it. Just like our favorite person whose wife can't get wet likes to say facts over feelings, I'm the same way as much as is possible. But this year, Ace and I were able to prove that it's real and just how strong it can be. You can just Google like Modern Warfare skill-based matchmaking. You'll find either my video or his, which presents the same data and roughly the same conclusions. And the conclusions that we reached in regards to Modern Warfare, and I assume other COD games before and probably coming after, is that the multiplayer strength would best be classified as a weak to moderate skill-based matchmaking. It wasn't too crazy in multiplayer, but it was there, and it should be able to be noticeable on like the more extreme ends of the spectrum. However, surprisingly, when Ace went back and retested this for Warzone, he found it to be even stronger than multiplayer, so I would probably classify the Warzone skill-based matchmaking as being moderate to strong, and this stronger skill-based matchmaking is far more noticeable in Warzone than it is to me in multiplayer. And one of the ways this manifests itself is obviously in the difficulty of killing enemy squads. So you would like to think about a battle royale game having a big mix of players, and you've got about a third of the lobby that's not so good, about a middle chunk that's average, and kind of a top third that are going to be pretty hard to put to bed. So you would think that throughout the course of the game, most of your fights would be against these not so good or moderate squads until kind of like the end of the match. And then the cream has risen to the top, and all of the good people are probably the ones left alive, so you have your sweaty fights at the end, and that's kind of how Battle Royale games are supposed to go. But in Warzone right now, these lower two brackets aren't present in my lobbies. It's pretty much all good people all the way. So every single gunfight that I have from the moment I land until the game ends is against a very high skill and sometimes difficult to deal with enemy with no breaks, no downtime, and no variety in between. For me, this has become increasingly problematic. I'm better than average at Warzone. I'm not going to kid you, I'm not terrible at this game and I'm not average. I'm a little bit better than average. However, most of my friends and the people that I play with are really good. Like really, really good. They're better than me. They throw down. So anytime I play, it's usually against all very good enemies. And you'll say, oh, well, your lobbies look easy and I've seen your videos and stuff. You guys only see the good plays on YouTube. If you want to see the raw lobbies, the fails, and the sometimes uncontrolled emotions, you can come check me out on Twitch. But you see the good stuff here on YouTube. And the problem with this, the problem with facing good enemies or enemies of equal or better skill all the time, is that it becomes unfun. So it's become unfun in that I cannot choose to use whatever weapons I want, or to level weapons that aren't good, or to work on camos like gold, diamond, Damascus, whatever. It's way harder for me to do Easter eggs in Warzone or Plunder because the skill level of all of my enemies is kind of incredible. Similar to that, you have to play your heart out or just quit. You don't get to take alternative strategies, you don't get to troll people, you don't get to cheese them, you don't get to goof off, you don't get to make like C4 jeeps and stuff like that. Either you play as hard as possible with those meta weapons, or you're just going to get wiped and your game's going to be over and there's no point in being there. Number 3 is pretty similar to number 2 in that there's no casual play, there's no breaks, there's no slowing down, there's no take a second to breathe, there's no you wiped a squad, hold up, I'm going to sit in this corner and use the bathroom and be right back. In the lobbies that I play in, if you don't keep killing and keep moving and keep going from one intensity to another, you die pretty much instantly. There's no breather moments. And ultimately, high skill lobbies get repetitive. That's my 4th one, because it's not just me that's kind of trapped in this situation, but all of the other people are trapped here with me and my sweaty friends. So pretty much everybody in the lobby has kind of got this mutually assured destruction of nobody has fun and everybody plays like it's CWL Championship, main stage, final match, S&D. And it just gets repetitive because people are kind of doing the same things over and over. And yes, competitive can be fun. Yes, hard can be fun. Challenged can be fun. But after a while, it gets boring. It can be very boring to play because it crushes all variety in the game. Now, to be fair, this is only going to be true for about the top 10% of players to have it this extreme, maybe even top 5%. But everybody, from the bottom to the top, will subjectively feel this in a similar way relative to their own skill. So even if they're kind of a bad player and they're matched with bad players of similar skill, they'll probably feel the enemies are quite competitive because they never match with players that are more bad than themselves. So it'll always feel pretty competitive or similar to this to everybody. And on a more personal level, this makes my job as a content creator much, much harder. 90% of those big high kill games you see on especially Call of Duty games, either Battle Royale or multiplayer, are on reverse boosted accounts. Reverse boosting is where you either mod account or just kill yourself for like a couple weeks straight so that it makes it look like you're the worst player in the game, so it matches you with the worst players it can find. And that's not everybody. There are people in this community that are exceptional, that play on one account, that maintain it, that slay it out, that don't cheat, that do earn these insane 50, 60 kill games in lobbies harder than mine. But there's also a not insignificant number of our community heroes that are out there bopping first-time players and players that might have disabilities because they just got a reverse boosted account and they're taking advantage of the most vulnerable people in our community to make money off of it. And that's a feels bad, man. That doesn't feel good. I'm over here slogging it out, sweating it out, and I'm watching people get famous just by reverse boosting and bopping on people with disabilities. That's kind of disgusting to me, actually. So now that we've talked about a lot of this other stuff, let's talk about what I want moving forward into Black Ops Cold War. In Black Ops Cold War, I would prefer a more relaxed skill-based matchmaking system. The devs, I assume in private, believe that skill-based matchmaking increases the life cycle of a game by increasing player retention and thus money, either through microtransactions or because Activision and every big game company in the world likes to advertise their monthly active players, and the more you retain them, the more that number goes up. So they probably have a metric ton of data. There's probably like a whole room full of guys running spreadsheets and doing math that I can't really understand to prove exactly what skill-based matchmaking is or isn't doing. So that data and those experts are probably accurate. In a way, it's probably helping them make more money overall, but it does so at the cost of squeezing other players out, and also at the cost of really changing up the psychology of players, because even players in the average spectrum or on the low spectrum are playing differently when they know that everything that they're doing is being watched, ranked, tallied, and that it'll carry forward into the next matches. And they're going to play differently when they realize that all the enemies are just as good as they are and there's no variety in their opponents. Ultimately, it's kind of a toxic mindset, like blaming every death on stream snipers or hackers in Warzone. It's just that it's so prevalent, it's easy to do, and it's the same kind of thing with skill-based matchmaking. It's so prevalent when a really good player kills you, well, that's because the algorithm forced you to fight that person. It's sort of a mental weakness and sort of a toxicity in a way that is probably best avoided. If Treyarch were to run a more relaxed skill matching system, it would be less noticeable to the players. You wouldn't have people feeling it as much. You wouldn't have people complaining as much. There would be less toxicity in our community. And it would also no longer force constant meta-only playstyles where everybody uses the best of everything. And I get that most players want to use the best gun. Most people aren't me. They're not trying to break the meta. They're not trying to troll. Most people want to use what's good, and that's fine. But they're not forced to, because there's a group of people that want to try new things, but they can't, because if you do anything other than the meta, you're kind of toast. So that would be much improved. It would make it easier for people to do challenges, camo challenges, unlock challenges. I don't know if we're going to have character challenges or whatever coming in Black Ops Cold War, but it would make it easier to do that. Any kind of Easter egg, anything would make more sense without skill-based matchmaking or with more relaxed skill-based matchmaking. And all of these things would be, in my opinion, good things for Black Ops Cold War. There's nothing wrong with having a game that lets you do challenges, that lets you do Easter eggs, that lets you explore and have some variety both of enemies and, things you interact with in the game. Forcing competitive until the end of time just kind of ramps people up until they go crazy. Or, hear me out, big galaxy brain here, same thing I've been saying for 6 years now. Just do what Black Ops 2 did and have a ranked playlist with really strong skill-based matchmaking in the ranked playlist, an elo system where you can see your rank, you know what level you're at, you know where you're progressing. If you're, if you're silver, you fight silvers. If you're gold, you fight in mostly gold, thing kind of like that. And then you can have a very casual or barely any skill-based matchmaking in the other modes. The more you relax the system, the more it's unnecessary for people to reverse boost, and the more unnecessary it is for people to play their heart outs every second of every match and go as meta as they possibly can. There's more actual casual play and practice and experimentation in the casual modes, which is what they're there for. The final thing that I want from Treyarch in regards to Black Ops Cold War and skill-based matchmaking is communication. One of the other problems with skill-based matchmaking right now is that nobody will say anything to the community other than a couple of YouTubers like myself and Ace and Sour Patch and other people that kind of like dig into this and try to learn something. No devs, no testers, no QA guys, nobody from Demonware, which runs the matchmaking, no PR, no corporate, no press releases, pretty much no official sources of information about skill-based matchmaking at all. There may be a few scarce, sideways kind of statements that are vague and have a positive spin. You'll always see a couple who get pulled up of interviews where they kind of like casually mention like, well, our game is supposed to protect players, or like one little stray sentence here and there, and they'll have kind of a positive spin and they don't really tell you anything is the most we get, and you get like one of those a year. What this does is creates an ecosystem where the loudest and dumbest voices get the most attention. It rewards the ignorant, it rewards the conspiracy theorists, and it rewards the I think with my feelings crowd. It's actually not that different than our current political situation with COVID-19 and the kind of disgusting split with America thinking it's either is or isn't real, or isn't a problem, and mask and no mask and silly things like that, when it's something pretty clear that we should all be on board and working with. Since there's no official statement with Treyarch, we're kind of left much like we are here in the US with an unclear leadership, and everybody just kind of does whatever they want. There's no clear information or even a direction. Even if they don't talk about skill-based matchmaking, they don't even talk about the direction or the goals of their matchmaking from any of the studios. So that means everything and anything you want to be real can be real. Almost nobody can do science. Almost nobody can crunch data. It's a skill set you have to learn over years. It's super boring to do. When I did it last year, it made me want to kill myself. It was miserable. I don't know how Ace managed to plow through all the data he had, but nobody's going to do that. So people are just going to believe whatever they want. If it sounds good, sure, totally. That's just as valid as everything else. And it creates this big conspiracy bonanza. It's like a fire sale on conspiracy theories regarding skill-based matchmaking. And the limited science that we're able to do without direct access to this just can't compete with it. And what this does, the problem with this, other than I just hate ignorance and anti-intellectualism, is that it creates a whole set of toxic behaviors of people just trying to game the system. Reverse boosting, modding accounts to reverse boost, committing suicide, killing other players. You can try to do opposite and like pro boost into impossible lobbies, make little toxic videos, toxic comments, toxic posts on Reddits, blaming everything on skill-based matchmaking, blaming nothing on skill-based matchmaking. Certain guns, they had the hip fire only thing this year where you just hip fire for a couple of games and it sends your accuracy down to 0, which was some component of skill matching, which gave you easier enemies. It causes people to do a bunch of bizarre things that ultimately aren't good for the game's ecosystem, which is ironically the number one reason the devs won't talk about skill-based matchmaking is because they're afraid that as soon as they acknowledge it, firstly, the community is going to rebel and go nuts and do what the COD community does, probably send death threats and crap like that. And then they're going to have a whole series of bizarre, unpredictable, and ultimately not good for the game behaviors that try to take advantage of the system. And I understand that fear, but we're pretty much already there because nobody really knows like that much about how it works. So we're all just doing weird things trying to take advantage of it. I do believe that skill-based matchmaking is necessary in some sense. You need to have some loose bands of matching to keep player groups together. It's very important, in my opinion, to have a protected lobby for new players and players that may or may not have visual or hand-eye coordination type disabilities that they're just... God, I'm trying not to get into weird ableism and stuff here, but There are people that play with missing fingers and stuff, and they're just not going to play as well as like elite PC gamers like Shroud and Ninja and stuff like that. They need to have their own lobbies to play in and be left alone, and that's okay. That's good for a game. And it's okay to mix the high and medium skill pools together. That's relatively okay too. But it doesn't need to be strong. It doesn't need to be crazy strong like it is right now in Warzone. I want Black Ops Cold War to have a ranked playlist where you can sweat it out if you want to. If you want to play ranked, if you want to go hard, if you want to play the best of your ability, go for it. That's the perfect place. That's where you get to prove your skills against other people that are also playing ranked as hard as they possibly can, where you don't get breaks, where you don't get downtimes, where you do play the meta. This is the place for it. And at the same time, I want Black Ops Cold War to have regular matches that have more relaxed skill-based matchmaking that allow me to have some more variety and fun in my game. That would be nice. I can work on camos one place, and I can try to improve my rank in the other place. And finally, I want Treyarch or Activision to make some kind of statement, some kind of explanation, lay something out, give players some sort of mental framework or groundwork for these matchmaking systems so that I just don't have to see any more weird conspiracies, because honestly, they make me want to eat a bowl of glass. Like, I just want to rip a pane of glass off the wall, hit it with a hammer, put it in a cereal bowl, probably pour some gasoline in there and eat it for breakfast every time I see this crap coming up again. It drives me crazy. And leaving us forever in the dark only brings out the worst in players.